Welcome to All About Art. My name is Alexandra, and I'm an art historian, curator, and writer. Within this podcast, topics relating to art history, cultural policy, the art sector, as well as a large range of other art-related topics will be covered. Conducting critical discussions, having entertaining exchanges, or just enjoying some relaxing chats, All About Art is where you'll find it all. Join me in exploring and developing cultural discourse. Welcome to another episode of All About Art. This is a special bonus episode recording of a live panel talk chaired by yours truly on the topic of arts and culture on the Canal, where I had the opportunity to speak to my good friend Simon Hodgkinson, founder of Slash Arts, a gallery on a boat, Paddy Screech, co-founder of Word on the Water, a bookstore on a boat, and Chuntian Hu, founder of Canal Dream CIC, a company that activates London's historic waterways through a variety of arts and cultural projects. This is a live and uncut recording of the panel talk where we speak about the impact culture has on the city and how it can be communicated on the canals that allow for a deeper engagement and accessibility for the public. You can find the links to all of the panelists and their projects in the show notes. I hope you enjoy. Before I dive in, I wanted to let you lovely listeners know that All About Art is on Patreon. So if you want some behind-the-scenes content, maybe a bit of merch, the chance to get one-on-ones with me and my guests, or you're simply wanting to support this project, I would be absolutely thrilled if you decided to sign up. You can do so through the link in the show notes. I also wanted to say thank you to those who have already signed up. Your support means the world, and it makes the further production, improvement, and growth of the podcast possible. And for that, I'm incredibly grateful. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Alexandra. I'm an art historian, writer, and the founder and host of the All About Art podcast. I am here tonight to host this panel discussion with Chuntian Hu, founder of Canal Dream CIC, Simon Hodgkinson, co-founder of Slash Arts, the gallery boat that we're currently in, and Paddy Screech, founder of the renowned book barge, Word on the Water. I would love it if each panelist would take a moment to introduce themselves and their work, and then I'm going to dive in with my first question. Chuntian, would you like to start us off?
Yes. Hi, I'm Chuntian. I'm the founder and director of Canal Dream CIC. I'm an event director and producer. I'm also a service and product designer, and I'm also an artist. For the past 2 years, I have been working on organizing canal-based art and culture events in London. And a little bit about Canal Dream. I started Canal Dream project since 2021 when I started a service design program at Royal College of Art. And then after I graduated, I continued developing it. And then I set up as a community interest company last year. And for now, we have organized 13 events along the region's canal and engaged more than 300 artists. And we set up our own Canal Dream Art Festival. And in the festival, get involved 6 boats from different organizations like Slash Art Boat Gallery, Paddy's Words on the Water Book Barge, and also Global Generation, the Floating Garden, and also some private boat.
So you're kind of the reason why we're sitting here together today and why there's kind of a common theme, a common thread with the conversation.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Simon?
Hi, I'm Simon. I think I know most of you, if not all of you. With Sarah, who's over there, I live on this boat, and we purchased this mooring in 2010 when we moved from, well, we had decided to move from Paris. We didn't actually move here to 2013, and this was long before we had any idea of turning it into a gallery. I retired at around that time, and I started taking art classes in the evening, and at one point one of my art class teachers, who was a PhD student at the RCA, said, "So Simon, why don't you go back and do some serious studies?" And so I ended up enrolling at CSM, only because actually it was just I didn't want to get on a bus and it was a walk from here.
For those who don't know, just to clarify, CSM is Central St. Martin's.
Central St. Martin's, yeah, it's just at Granary Square there. And then COVID arrived and I stopped for health reasons. But my classmates who I had helped organise various shows with said, "Simon, can you help us during COVID?" And that's how we started Slash Arts. And we've been going for three and a half years now, and we've had many shows and festivals, and started working with Chuntian a year and a half ago, and that's taken us to a whole different level.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Paddy Screech. I'm one of the three troubled old men who started Word on the Water, the London Book Barge, about 12 years ago, which is it's a small independent bookshop on a 1920s Dutch barge that used to ply the canals moving every 2 weeks, but now has a permanent home here in Granary Square, which is a perfect place to be a bookshop, sort of bisected by the Guardian newspaper and the British Library and CSM, which it's worth saying is like one of the most prominent art colleges in the world. So we're never gonna lose money overestimating the intelligence of our client group in our shop. But we've been going for 12 years, and we staggered for most of it. It's only in the last 3 or 4 years that it's rather taken off. We've got a little stage on the roof, and we do live music and book launches and poetry performances, and try and have sort of something cultural going on as much of the time as we can. And we're open 7 days a week. And we're now staffed by, we're kind of a community of about 15 people now who sort of keep the thing going. Bookshops are a bit like they used to say about it takes a village to build a church in sort of the Old West, and it's kind of the same for us. And the reason we're still there is because we were saved by the public about 8 years ago when we said we'd have to close because the constant moving meant that no one could ever find us. And people all appeared out of the woodwork and signed petitions and wrote to Private Eye, and suddenly we were offered a mooring after many years of being regarded as sort of enemy number one by the canal authorities. So we're only there really but for the grace of the people that sort of come and use us.
Wonderful. I didn't know that you also did book launches. If I ever write a book, I'm definitely going to come to you because that's the perfect place.
You'll be entirely welcome.
Delightful. My first question that I want to direct to the entire panel to set a base for the conversation going forward is, what does the canal mean to you in terms of your cultural projects, and why did you choose it as a base for your respective businesses? Maybe Simon, could you start us off?
Well, I'd love to say that it was divine inspiration, but as I've just explained, we moved here and the idea of using it as a gallery came later. But I have to say that if it had been a grand plan, it would have been a brilliant one, because actually it never ceases to amaze me how what a good idea it is to have. It could be somebody else, but it happens to be us. A gallery on a boat. Contemporary art desperately needs new kinds of venues. The traditional white cube, which kind of separates out individual artworks to give them their full glory, is quite a dated concept for many artists who really would like to see their art put against something in a site-specific context. And really that's what we do. We are a very site-specific gallery, not just in terms of the interior of the boat, but contemporary art is today as well as much exterior as interior. but also because of the fact that stuff can happen on the roofs, stuff can happen around the boat. We do stuff under bridges, we do stuff in the garden here, we do stuff in loads of different places. And the artists love that. They love the fact that they can actually work on site-specific stuff. Most of the art that we exhibit is invented for the context. They make it for the context. It also happens to be a very good idea because most white cubes struggle to get visitors, frankly. And we happen to be on the busiest stretch of the canal, where we not only have artists from Central St. Martin's and the general public, but also many people who've never been in an art gallery before. And actually they're attracted to us not because we're an art gallery, but because we're a boat. And then they come in and they discover the art. So we also are very much part of a kind of democratization of contemporary art, which I think we're very proud of.
Yeah, I think canals are really interesting. I mean, the simple answer is, why did you do it on the canal? Is we lived on the canal and we wanted to be bargees, so we wanted to find a way to make a living and live on the canal. My friend used to say, my friend John Privet, who I set up the book Barge with, who sadly passed away last year, used to say a bargee is someone who makes a living from the canal and lives on the canal, like the Victorian traders, whereas a boater is a sort of hat. He was a little bit dismissive of those that lived recreationally on the canal.
But live and breathe it.
Exactly. But I think canals are very interesting, especially in London and in cities, because they're kind of lower than the roads, and they're short circuit the sort of system. There's a lot of places where to go from one place to the other on the canal takes you about 4 minutes. But if you were to do it on the tube, it's like a 25-minute journey. It's like it's a sort of parallel universe underneath the city. And the people who walk on the canals tend to be happy, which isn't true of everyone all the time in London, especially on transportation systems. There's something, I think they're like arteries of sort of countryside in the middle of an urban space, you know. They're sort of liminal. They're not, the same rules don't apply. People say hello to each other on the canal, and the same people literally up 12 steps on the street would avoid eye contact. It's sort of a different place altogether. And I think for something like a bookshop, which is particularly nowadays, I think people are very grateful for trustworthy old things like bookshops. But it seems to be a place where people slow down naturally, and where you sort of, you know, you're not doing the sort of 4-minute YouTube clip, move to the next one sort of urgency of modern media. You can, everything's a deep dive, including falling in the canal, which I've done 7 times now.
Me too. 7.
Well done. Congratulations. You're a real boater if you've fallen in.
7 or several?
7.
7.
I like to try and fall in every 2 years.
Got it. Okay, noted. Noted. When's the next one up? When you need
I'm
to fall
due.
again? Oh, right.
Probably this evening.
I'll make sure to push you in later.
Hey, I'll pull you in with me.
Oh, Chuntian.
This is my 3rd year in UK. For me, the canal is like a natural map I used to explore a new city, understanding a city, and then engage a city. And the reason why I choose canal, many people ask me this question. I just love canal. I love the history of the canal, and then I also believe the potential of the canal. About the history part, from the Industrial Revolution to the declining with the competition of a railway and roads, and then the growth of the leisure activities in 1970s, and now was a new purpose for this old asset. I did some research, so now there are about the current opportunities on the canal. Now there are 2,000 miles of canals in the UK, and then nearly 9 million people live within 1 kilometer of the canal. This means the canal are a very accessible green spaces, and also this linear white line is a very valuable habitat for the wildlife. So I believe the canal network has a huge potential value. Another personal reason why I choose canal is before I come to UK, I also live along the canal in China. It's called 京杭大运河, Beijing-Hangzhou Grand Canal. I live at the beginning part of this canal. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Chuntian, I want to ask you the next question. So you worked together with Simon and Slash Arts for the London Design Festival in your capacity as founder of Canal Dream CIC. Can you and Simon tell me more about what you brought together for this project, and also maybe a little bit more about what Canal Dream CIC is?
Okay. Let me start it with a general background of the London Design Festival. LDF is one of the world's leading design events. This is a citywide event. So in London, there are 13 design districts. And for the King's Cross Design District, there are last year there are 28 official partners, including Tom Dixon, Central St Martin, Transport for London. We are very new and small, but our program is very unique. Our overall program is called Understanding Canal, the Winds of the City. There are 4 sections. Section 1 is 2 art exhibitions presented by Simon / Art, and then 2 community activities is hosted by Global Generation, the floating garden mod there, and then 1 panel discussion. The guest is come from different sectors like charity, CIC, and art and culture organizations, and also a professor from academic area. And during the panel discussion, we also launched a Canal Dream Hub, and our own zine is called the Canal Dreamer. And
so we did a whole entire program surrounding this with a lot of collaborators.
Yes, and we also, together with Paddy's Water and Water / Art and Global Generation, we also did 2 Dream Night. One film night is curated by Adam. And Max.
Who is
Max
helping
is
us with
here.
the sound
Yes.
and video
Thank you,
tonight.
Adam. And performance night. For the performance night, we got more than 700 audience booked the tickets.
Wow! Oh my God! What did something like that look like? I mean, the movie night. I think I've seen photos. Right? Didn't you project onto? It was within a tunnel, right?
It's under that bridge.
Yeah,
near the
under the
water
bridge
and water.
that's near
Yes.
where we're currently sitting. I'm saying that because this is going to be streamed later for people to listen into, and so I'm giving context for listeners who aren't here tonight.
Do you want to introduce more about the art exhibitions held by Slash Arts?
I think the first thing I want to say about it is that Chuntian came to me with the idea as, why don't we participate in this London Design Festival? I said, well, what a ridiculous idea. You know, we're not designers, we're artists, you know. And anyway, she persuaded me, and which is very Chuntian-like. And it was incredibly useful because of the extraordinary exposure we got. As Chuntian said, we started for the first time actually ticketing, not for free events, and we got, I think I got 700, I think you got another 1,000, didn't you? It was something like 1,700 people who were going to come to the events. Unfortunately, on the night of the King's Cross night, it was absolutely pissing down. And so we had to shift all the activities under the York Road Bridge, which is about 6 meters wide, the actual paving there. which means it can hold 100, 150 people. And it's very grungy under there. There's a graffiti on the walls and everything, and there's boats going past and cyclists coming past. And we did all the activities, the music, the dancing, the light show, the film, everything under there in this grungy atmosphere. And we filmed it, and it's actually on YouTube, /Art Gallery Boat channel. It was brilliant.
Yeah.
I mean, to give you a sense of what goes on, from the year before when we participated, you can imagine boats on the sort of summer's evening with laser shows from the top of the boat, or with beautiful, bizarre white couture costumes doing sort of really interesting choreography, but on the top of a boat and sort of strangely lit in the evening light, you know, and different musicians and singers. There was a boat. The garden boat that parks in the big pool at Granary Square, which just had one musician after the other going on for sort of 2 hours. Just really beautiful, interesting, different sorts of music, just available to anyone who's walking along the towpath or happens to sort of come upon it. It's the other lovely thing about art things on the canal, which is the canal's public space. You're doing it in the public square, you know, you can't really, it's hard to charge people money to come and see a thing that's in a public space. So it's kind of art happening out there in the world rather than in a sort of closed off private space somewhere, which is, it's in that space in Granary Square on a summer's night when those things are going on, it's a very different way to do those things, and it sort of makes them come alive again, you know. It makes you sort of pay attention to them in a new way. Everything's better on a boat, as my friend says.
Well, that also really underlines what you said earlier, Simon, about the democratization of art and making it more accessible, making it something that people who may never set foot in a gallery, because it is really intimidating. It is, if you don't know that, you know, no, you don't have to pay, but you have to ring a doorbell and they have to buzz you in, and then you go in and it's very silent, and sometimes it can feel very sterile. And so having the opportunity to be able to access cultural projects, be it performances or light shows or fine art, painting, all of these different things, that's incredibly valuable to society, to the city. What you do with Canal Dream, Chuntian, really transforms the waterway into a creative space, which has historically, as you've already mentioned, been used as an industrial asset. Why is the activation of the canal important to the city, and how do you utilize it for London specifically?
When we talk about the cities, a large part we are talking about is people and community. Animating the canal or using art and culture to animating the canal can benefit, I think, two communities, the canal community and the emerging creative community. For the canal community, we bring a range of arts and culture activities to promote the well-being. And for the creative community, we provide opportunities for emerging artists to create and connect.
Which is something that's so needed in London, isn't it? It's such a big city, and sometimes these opportunities don't come across so often.
And London is creative industry also is a core industry in London. So we have a lot of emerging artists, and they need platform to show their works.
Yeah.
And about
I didn't mean to interrupt you. Sorry.
And about the second question you asked, how I do it in London specifically. I'm going to share my dream strategy, top secret.
Top secret that is now going to be revealed to all of you, as well as streamed online.
I think there are two key words, two strategies. One is connecting. I develop network from both the creative community and the canal community. On the one side is a creative community. I connect a range of creatives from different disciplines. I call them dream maker. And then we develop different types of dreams, creative activities, from visual art to performance art, poetry, film, music. And on the other hand, the canal community, I connect with different boat and canal-based organizations. I call them dream supporter or dream partner. We work together to provide space and stage for dream makers to make dreams. And the second strategy is prototyping. From the beginning to now, I used a design-led approach to develop the Canal Dream project. I say each event is like a prototyping. Along the region's canal, I do a lot of prototype tests. I test the location, test the activities, and the people. So yeah, this is how I do it in London.
Like an exploration as well, this prototyping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So something will go wrong, something I found, oh, it's okay. I will keep doing it.
You know, it's so important to do that with projects. And I think on a broader level, when it comes to creative projects and anyone who works in the cultural and creative industries, when you're doing your own thing, when you're running your own business or trying to build something up, I mean, I do it with All About Art and with events that I put on. You learn something every single time you do it. So this prototyping or exploring, trying something out, seeing if it works, if it doesn't, adapt. That's one of the best things because you grow as a professional, as a person, but then you're also creating something and making it more suitable to the audiences that you're trying to reach.
I think that's a nice thing about canals as well, because they're more forgiving. Because London
Are
is
they?
like, well, London is so regulated.
Yeah.
If you try and do anything anywhere in this city, there's too many vested interests, there's so much money, everyone's put rules around everything you do, but somehow the canals are lighter and easier for things like that. Because, so if you do a thing and it doesn't work, doesn't matter, you can come back and do it again 3 weeks later and just keep doing it until it does work, because nothing's lost and you haven't let down someone who gave you permission to do it and won't give you permission again, because it's public space, so they can't tell you to not do it again, you know, it's your boat, you can do what you want on the roof. Yeah.
I mean, actually, we find that we are asked, especially during rehearsals, that we are told we have to get permission, you know, and I say, yeah, thanks very much, and then we just ignore it.
Who tells you this? Members of the public, or like
there are security
officials?
guards. There are King's Cross security guards. They, you know, they look at a laser being shone on the Google building and they say you can't do that. Yeah.
There's this famous phrase on the Underground, have you seen something that doesn't look right? And that's a real English thing. It's like, if you begin to push an envelope somewhere, someone in a tabard is going to come and ask you if this is really a very good idea.
See it, say it, sort it.
Exactly. But it's easier to get...
Can I get in trouble for copyright with that if I get that on the podcast?
I don't know where that phrase comes from. It's easier to get forgiveness than permission.
Yeah.
That's a really true thing about
Well, we have never been stopped from doing things on the towpath, on the boat roof, under the bridge, during an actual show. Only whilst we've been rehearsing. Those are the only times where they've. So far so good.
Paddy, Word on the Water has become an absolute staple for book lovers in London, students, and tourists who are enjoying Granary Square, which is, as already stated, it's near King's Cross and near the Central St. Martin's School of Art, a world-renowned place to study. It may be quite a simple question, but I was wondering, does it function as a typical bookstore business-wise? Like, how do you choose, and when I was writing this question, I didn't mean for this pun to land, but I mean, how do you choose which publications to bring on board?
Curation's kind of the story of book shopping, really. I started, as I mentioned before, with this lovely guy called John Privet, who was a world-class curator. And that's because he'd lived a really outsider life. He'd been homeless, he'd been a heroin and crack user, he'd been mistreated appallingly in a private school and before that. And then he'd gone to college, and then he'd got a very highly scored MA in American literature. And then he'd sold books illegally on the pavement in King's Cross and Upper Street in Islington, and been chased around by the police for selling books because God forbid. And then he'd sold books in a market stall, and then he met me. He was the first person I met when I moved on to the canal. And we bonded very quickly on our love of cannabis and literature, let's face it. And we spent a lot of time hanging around together talking. And I went to Oxford, I did English at Oxford, and then worked for 20 years doing other things, working in the homeless scene and running drug treatment centres for homeless people and stuff. And by the time I'd met him, I was proper burnt out doing that. And so it's really lovely because our friendship kind of brought back reading and literature into my life, which I'd kind of, I hadn't read. They force-feed you novels. It's a Oscar Wilde quote about being force-fed strawberries and how you go off them. And I was kind of a bit like that about reading books, reading novels anyway, when I met John. And he sort of brought all that alive again. So one of the things about curating a little bookshop is that people choose the books rather than algorithms. And if you go into Waterstones, it's kind of choosing the books in the same way that YouTube's choosing what videos you're going to see based on what you liked last time. And, if you leave that to run, you end up just reading the same thing over and over and over again. And it sort of breaks eclectic cultural sort of diets altogether and just makes you have the same thing. And so I think people notice the difference. They can notice that humans are choosing books. We're trying to be a normal independent bookshop, that can be the bookshop for a community. But we're in one of the most diverse places in Britain and excited and proud to be. And so we're kind of curating with an eye on that. So we want to be very broad and very reflective, and whichever of the million cultures that go to make up a London you're from, the idea is you can see yourself reflected somewhere in the curation, and you can find something that's maybe targeted for you as well as, the broadness of everyone else being there. It's the London story, really. It's like you want to have a place for yourself there, but you want to benefit from the light of all the other colours kind of shining on your face at the same time, Now, since John's departure, it used to just be the two of us, but I now sort of spread the curation out among 4, 5, 6 different people. I've got a friend she's a literary translator who lives on the West Coast with her wife in a very beautiful little house in LA, and she curates some of the books, so I get that sort of perspective in. We've always had a real love of American literature as well as English literature in the Barge. There's kind of a proud tradition of that. We're a bit inspired by Shakespeare & Co., which is a wonderful French bookshop that was famous for bringing English books to France. They discovered and were the first to really publish James Joyce's stuff or sell James Joyce's stuff back in the 20s. And so we're a bit inspired by them. And we see a lot of Americans because we're right next to this international station, which is lovely. And there's a weird thing that English people love American publishing and American people love English publishing. And so we sort of have both.
Same with the accents, isn't it?
There's something to that, yeah.
Can't stand the American.
So we try to be really broad. We're a literary bookshop. We only do English language because if we were to pay proper sort of tribute to the range of languages that actually are extant in London, we'd have 30 different languages, and we can't do that. We don't know how to source those books.
And you don't have the space either, probably.
No, but we really like books in translation, and we'll have a lot of that. So yeah, we're trying to be everything to everyone, really. Got a good children's section. Classic, cult, contemporary is the sort of phrase we use. Lots of funky non-fiction. Interesting, chosen by humans, that seems to kind of fit the times. Amazing.
Funky non-fiction. I like that a lot. Because we were just speaking about curation, Simon, I want to ask you a little bit more about slash arts, because you've brought art into a domestic space, but quite a special one that's on the water. When you're choosing to work with artists, what do you take into consideration when it comes to their work, the curatorial concepts, and how it's contextualized within or also on top of the space?
So I finished my studies, actually, my MA studies at Chelsea, and I was taken in, because things had changed by the time the COVID ended. I was shown around by Patty Ellie, who's the head of the programme there. And it was a day when the class was putting up an exhibition in one of the places there. And she took me in, and they'd all put up their stuff on the walls. And she said, right, I want you to all take your stuff off the walls. Off the walls! Nothing on the walls. And I took that lesson to heart. So I think the first thing that we do is, people come to us. They've seen the show here. A lot of the stuff, it comes to us and people want to do a show and we ask for a proposal. Essentially we're looking for non-commercial, experimental art. We're not trying to make money. So far, we haven't tried to make money with this. An art which understands the site specificity of the gallery. And so all sorts of extraordinary things have happened because of the creativity of the people who've come onto the boat. So just to mention a few, one of the first shows we had was a Betty Leon. You know Betty?
Yeah, that was the first show that I actually came to.
Right.
That's when I met you.
Who does these kind of intestines?
She's amazing.
100-foot long, which she wraps up into these big things, which she hangs on trees or whatever. She and they are kind of wrapped in stockings, which are AI printed. And she put a big lump of these things up on the roof, which was beautiful. And then she started wrapping it round the boat and bringing it through the window and wrapping it round things inside the boat.
She's great.
And that was the first extraordinary exhibition that we had. And there were all sorts of things everywhere in the boat. Last year we had, at the other end of the spectrum, site-specific theatre. We work with Jerry Pilgrim, who runs the Mount View Site-Specific Theatre School. And she introduced us to the Brass Altar, who were doing a thing about prostitution in King's Cross prior to the development. And one of the girls did a little piece in the bathroom. So Chuntian and I went in. We were the audience. She sat on the toilet.
The bathroom here on the
bathroom,
boat, which I don't know if everyone
knows. It's 4 foot wide and 7 foot long. So we sat on the edge of the bath, and she sat and she started telling us about harassment. She was putting her makeup on, and talking about harassment by the police, because there was this big thing in the 90s. They were trying to clean the streets in King's Cross, and so this was the story, and it was so intensely intimate. It was incredible thing. So that's another one, and then we have a lot of music on the roof. Mary will testify to the fantastic Portuguese artist Rosanna, who we've had a couple of times. Who is starting to do big things now.
She's fabulous.
She's fantastic. So really, it's don't put anything on the walls. It's not interesting. Use the interior space, different space. People have even used the fridge as a place to exhibit. Use the roof. Mixed genre is generally what works best. So we try not to do solo shows, actually. We tend to do multiple genres, multiple artists.
Multiple mediums.
Multiple mediums, yeah. And we see what happens, Yeah. We often don't know what's going to happen. Certainly when we first, because Chuntian was actually just such a person who came along and said, I've seen things on you, I want to use your boat. And she said,
taking initiative.
I said, look, do a proposal. So she did. She does these fantastic PowerPoint things, which
that's a compliment, isn't it? You
Yeah.
do such great PowerPoints.
which seduce you by their beauty, but they don't tell you anything, actually. So the first show, I thought, well, yes, we've got to have Chuntian. And what she did was and I had no idea until the day it happened, she closed off really the end of the tunnel space here into a kind of amphitheatre, and over 3 days, 80 artists performed. So there was a fashion show amongst kind of Roman ruins on the other bank there. There was music on the roof. There was a show inside which I had to close because it was really dangerous actually first time round. But
the exploration. What did you call it before?
Prototyping.
Prototyping, yeah. That was definitely
The prototyping.
not properly prototyped. It was prototyped on the day. And that was, that was the. I mean, I realised then that this was far more ambitious than anybody had been, and I realised that this was something we ought to try and do more of. And
I guess your synergies really aligned because of what your aims are in terms of getting culture closer to the people, but also in terms of activating the canal. That's something that.
Well, that's right.
Yeah.
There's this brilliant young curator who wants to do work on the canal.
Yeah.
It's a godsend to us, absolute godsend.
And there's a thing about connecting. So, there's artists who are individual doing their thing.
Yeah.
But if you've got someone like Chuntian who, all she does is she asks really nicely, and you think you've got a choice, but you don't.
That's how I ended up here.
Once she's asked you really nicely, it's happening. There's no two ways about it. And so she's, but somehow really good at just connecting diverse people together, and that suddenly that stops sort of little lonely artists doing their thing from being that. They're now part of a community of artists doing something, and that's a much more powerful thing, And those artists all get to know each other and meet each other doing those things, and so they get to grow from it as well. And I think connecting people together is a much more important part of the art world than sometimes always gets noticed. It's the person that brings the people together in the place is actually doing a very important thing. The gardener. You're a gardener, Chuntian.
Thank you.
I want to go back to the London Design Festival that we were talking about a little bit earlier. Simon and Chuntian, I wanted to ask you, what were you aiming to communicate with your program from a public art but also a performance art perspective? And then following that, Paddy, I would then love to ask you more about the performance that you do on the boat as well.
During LDF, I want to communicate the beauty of the canal through public art and environmental performance. We aim to bring new audience to the canal and also new perspectives to the existing audience. And another goal is, as I mentioned before, LDF is one of the most influential creative events. So bring canal to a large and more invisible platform will allow more stakeholders to realize the potential of the canal to be developed as a creative space in the future.
I mean, curatorially, we weren't trying to do anything different. We were looking for. So, I curated two shows on the boat during that week, and Chuntian organised everything else around. So the two shows were, one was a Ugandan artist who, because there were 2 weekends, who did the first weekend. And she is marrying a British guy, and she just chose to do the show with the future mother-in-law, who was British, and it was a very strange mix of African and British art actually, but it worked. It worked, and then the second show was curated by somebody I was at Chelsea with, a brilliant Viennese artist, very conceptual. Everything in Chelsea is conceptual. you put something on the wall, it's irrelevant. Who did a show with, I think, 8 Viennese artists, included dancers and violin, cello players, and a variety of visual artists, and it was all very quirky, but actually it was great for that. It was great. So, and as I said earlier, the other thing that happened was that by chance, because the rain stopped play, we ended up doing this whole evening of entertainment under the York Road Bridge, which created a quite different thing to what we had been intending. But it was great, you know.
Do you feel like it worked out for the better?
It did. I think, you know, we've got, I think, certainly a YouTube video which
it looks really
it
cool.
looks remarkable. Yeah.
I remember when we were watching it and you pointed out when someone was trying to get through with the bike. And I just thought that would just stress me out as like an event organizer.
People doing
props to you for like
people were doing calm. Cartwheels while somebody was cycling through. It was extraordinary.
Talk about pushing boundaries. And Paddy, you also do events such as poetry readings and jazz concerts, and as you said earlier, book launches, which I'll keep you in mind.
Yeah, I got you.
Are the live events based off of the literature you have on the boat?
Sometimes. So the third partner, there was me, there's John Privet, and there's a Frenchman called Stéphane Chaudin, who's also known as Noy, which is Noah in French. And he was the original owner of the boat. And when we talked him into doing the experiment of doing a bookshop with us, one thing he insisted on, he said, I will put my boat in, but I will build a stage on the roof. And he'd sort of come from the world of squat parties. And when he's not in England, he's in the southeast France. And his project down there is he builds these fabulous 30-foot high puppets.
Oh, really?
For events and so right from the off, we had a stage on the roof, and we didn't have a plan for. All we said about it was that we wanted the book barge to emit culture, like free, like sort of butterflies everywhere it went. The idea was that it would just have stuff coming off it, because public space in London is very regulated, and it's kind of nice to have that stuff going on. And one of the reasons we had trouble getting a mooring, because we kept getting complaints because of all the stuff that was going on the roof all the time, because we were always outside some poor person's house in Hackney or something. But we put the roof up there, and then we just the stage up, and we waited basically, and people just kind of knew what was meant to happen there. And first a saxophonist came and said, would it be okay if he played up there? And then this fabulous cellist with a top hat started playing regularly with us. And since we're in Granary Square, you can't busk in Granary Square because men in tabards will come and tell you to stop. But we're on the canal, and so we're the neighbour of Granary Square.
Yeah, it doesn't really count.
So we've got a busking stage. So I can stop things that it's bad to have on a canal. It's like there's not much sort of heavy metal music you can really play in a public space on a canal, but there isn't much you can say no to. But we've now grown quite a busy sort of scene on that roof. There's about 20 different musical acts of one sort or another. There's a kora player, and there's folk musicians, and there's lots of jazz groups that come and play there regularly. And once a month we do a big free 5-hour-long spoken word live music sort of event. Different people each time, sort of 12, 13 different acts. Because people constantly come they know about it now, and they ask and they say, how do I get to perform on the barge? And so we just kind of shove them to this lovely man called Everton, who curates those nights once a month. So we'll have these sort of lovely long summer evening free shows on the roof, give up selling books for a few hours. And
what happens in the winter?
We kind of shrink like a snail's antenna in the winter. We can't do so much. We're just growing a winter scene which is more about book groups, creative writing groups inside the boat. But we're more of a little bookshop for the winter, really. You've got to kind of hibernate a bit on the canal.
We're all hibernating.
And we can't, there's no point, even if we had a massive stage on the roof, a cover on the roof to protect from the rain, no one's out on the towpath on a rainy day, so we're about the summer season, and then we get to rest and just be a quiet little bookshop in the winter.
I have one final question to the entire panel. How can we expect our waterways to be activated by you or by others within the cultural sector going forward? What do we as the public viewership in London have to look forward to? Anyone can take us off with that?
You going to start? Shall I start?
You start.
You start.
Okay. Well, yeah, may as well make a couple of announcements, right?
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
We've got a new idea to have a light show in the tunnel. So we've commandeered the party boat.
Fabulous.
Wait, there's a party boat?
Yeah, there's a party boat that basically generally has bachelorette parties with naked men on it every now and again. But he's an artist actually, as it happens.
Sounds like it.
Jan, and he says, "Oh yeah, great idea." So he's going to take the cover off the party boat so that it holds 42 people, and you'll be able to see all around you. And so we're basically creating with 3 artists this incredible light show. We've already had a whole bunch of light shows, but this is going to be something else. And the idea is you go through the tunnel, and then you turn around the other end, you come back, you get off at the other end. And it's going to music and light, and a glass of champagne or Prosecco. It's called Mind Tunnel, and it'll start to be advertised in a couple of months.
Cool.
So that's the first thing. The second thing, and I don't know, to be honest, I'm going to announce it, but I don't know if it's going to come off. We have an ambition, which I've discussed with Paddy and Chuntian, of having a dedicated gallery situated next to Paddy's boat, because much as this is a fantastic boat to have a gallery on, it is our home as well, so we're quite restricted. Paddy's right when he says that, our art actually dies as well during the winter months. We do very little, and then we the idea of this is to just give us a lot more time, dedicated time, for art during the year, and for doing other things on the boat. So we're starting negotiations now. We'll see where it takes us.
Amazing. Chuntian?
In my understanding, animating the canal, because I mentioned before, a part of events organizing, I'm also a service designer specifically focused on social innovation projects. So in my understanding, animating the canal not only requires actions by the arts and culture sector, but also need a cross-sector collaboration, because this is not only a pure arts and culture issue, but a complex social issue.
Yeah.
We need to engage a wide range of stakeholders in the system, arts and culture sector, environmental sector, and local authorities, research institutions, and also health sector, who are focused on art prescribing or green prescribing. We should bring all the stakeholders together. And this is also why last year, a part of Canal Dream events, we also launched Canal Dream Hub. This is my understanding.
Speaking of the environmental impacts as well, Paddy and I were talking about this before the panel started, but your boat is powered by solar energy for the most part or completely?
There's about 2 to 3 months in the winter where you've got to run a little bit of generator because the solar won't do it. And that's true on all boats, but from about
that says
now...
a lot about London.
Including your boat.
From about now through until about November,
Yeah.
the boat, just basically the music on the roof is yesterday's sunshine. We just live off solar.
That's quite beautiful. No, the music on the roof is yesterday's sunshine. Oh, I really like that. Are there any upcoming projects that we can look forward to?
I mean, no, the thing I wanted to say really about that and the future, when I look at the future at the moment on the canals, the thing we haven't kind of said is that the boating community and the continuously cruising community, the ones who move every 2 weeks, live on their boats.
Chuntian, you have to do that.
Yeah.
I do that too. I've lived on the boat for 16 years moving.
But so do you have to move the word on the water boat, or are
No
you
longer.
living on...
We were saved by the fact we didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
And as a business, it's very difficult to do that. There are continuous cruising businesses that live on the river.
Yeah. But you live on a separate boat.
I live on a
Cruise
separate boat, and that moves every 2 weeks. That's the rule. If you haven't been able to get a permanent mooring that you pay quite a lot every month for, or you can't afford to do that, most commonly you can't get them anyway. The vast majority of people who live on these canals move every 2 weeks, and that's because there's a law that goes all the way back to the 1800s that you can reside on your boat provided it is being used bona fide for navigation, which means a moving boat can be a home, and that dates right back to the days of the families that would bring the cotton and the ice and from Leeds down into London, and if they weren't allowed to reside on their boats, then the whole industrial transportation system wouldn't have worked. That law's still in place, and so unlike, say, Amsterdam, where people have to live on moorings and pay quite a lot of money to do so, and you can't really have an itinerant living community, you can in Britain because of this law. But the community is embattled at the moment because recent changes in the way that the canals are funded, that started with David Cameron's Conservative Party years back, but now this year, the government finally stopped providing money for the canals at all, which means that the Canal and River Trust, who've been charged, they're the non-profit who've been charged with the responsibility to keep the canals going and upkeep, have now in effect been told they have to monetize the canal. The canal has to pay for itself. And that brings all sorts of changes potentially to the canal, and there's a worry in the continuous cruising community that they might do away with this law now, because a great deal more money could be raised by the canals if everyone had to live on a permanent mooring and pay a monthly fee, and there was less moving. And similarly, there's a lot of new moorings that are turning up that you have to pay £25 a night, whereas this sort of 200-year right to park your boat is kind of disappearing. If you don't have £25 a day to spend, you don't get to live on a boat anymore. So when I look at the future, I'm a little bit concerned, and if we can just carry on doing what we're doing, that will be an achievement at the moment, because it's quite uncertain times on the canal. But 'twas ever thus, and the only reason we have a canal system is because the boating community in the 50s and 60s, Rolt and his people, did campaigning regattas and told the government, who at the time were pouring concrete into the locks and thinking of the canal system as an outmoded industrial transportation system, that the boating community went, no, this is a resource that people in Britain love and we need to sort of keep it. So when I think about the future, I think about keeping the canals as they are, and if there's an opportunity to support the boating community at some point, then I would kind of urge people to do it, because nothing happens automatically.
Well, on that note, thank you all for coming on the panel this evening.
And that is it for today on All About Art. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave me a rating or a review, as it helps more people discover the show. Also, feel free to share with your friends, or if you share on social media, tag me and get in touch. Thank you so much for listening.